Okay, today we're going to be talking about my research methods for Education 751. So first off, let's talk about what methods will be used. Both qualitative and quantitative methods will be used in as a form of research. The questions involved. The first question is, can students benefit if the English Language Arts block is broken up into segments? And I have a quote from Drucker that says, until we manage time, we can manage nothing else. The quote's very powerful and potent and has a meaning to research methods that will be used in this paper. This research plan will help the research go through the process of analyzing data in order to write a dissertation and seeks to answer the first question, which is, can students benefit if the English Language Arts block is broken into segments. The researcher will be using 5th graders in the Knox County school system to collect and analyze data. The researcher will be observing the same English Language Arts teacher. The researcher will be passing out permission forms prior to conducted research so that prior consent will be obtained before the research is conducted. The English Language Arts teacher will be teaching one class by spending the whole 90 minutes on English Language Arts and not breaking it up into any segments. Then, the English Language Arts teacher will be teaching a second class and breaking the English Language Arts block into different segments. The researcher will be using both quantitative and qualitative data to conduct research. Quantitative research is either experimental or non-experimental. Experimental research involves a study of the effect of the systematic manipulation of one variable on another. Non-experimental research occurs when the researcher identifies variables and may look for relationships among them, but does not manipulate the variables. The research that will be used in this paper is primarily non-experimental. Method for the first question, which is, can students benefit if English Language Arts blocks are broken up into segments? The researcher will begin by analyzing data to answer the first question presented above. In order to answer the question, can students benefit if the English Language Arts block is broken up into segments, the researcher must use different types of data to analyze and observe the behaviors of students in the English Language Arts classroom. The researcher will begin research by collecting pre- and post-tests from the students in Ms. Thompson's class. This type of research is considered quantitative. The research will be used over the course of an entire school year. The researcher will begin collecting the data in August and will finish collecting the data and begin analyzing the results on the end of May. The researcher will specifically ask for the pre- and post-tests from the first period and second period students in her class. The first period class is the one that is taught with no breaks in instruction, and the second period class is the one that is taught that is broken up into 3 different segments. The researcher will label the first class's pre- and post-test as Sample A. The researcher will label the second period class's pre- and post-test as Sample B. The researcher will look at the scores from both classes and try to find a correlation between better test scores and breaking the ELA block into segments. The researcher will collect this data using bar charts. The bar charts will be labeled Sample A and Sample B. The charts will show the pre- and post-test data from the beginning of the year. The charts will then be used to see if there's a correlation between grades and students who are in the ELA class that is breaking the instruction into segments. The second type of data collected from this research is observation notes. The researcher will be sitting in the classroom during first and second period. The researcher will use a behavior chart to tally the behaviors of students in each class. The first period class will be labeled Sample A, and the second period class will be labeled Sample B. The researcher will be looking for a correlation between student attention and behavior in the classroom based on how the two classes are taught during the ELA block. The researcher will also take several observation notes about what is happening during the class. The researcher will label all observation notes as Sample A or Sample B, so the researcher will be able to easily identify the two different classes. The researcher will be observing the classes each day from August until May. This will allow the researcher ample time and data in order to form a well-analyzed research paper. The second question involved is if the English Language Arts block is broken into smaller segments, will the students pay better attention and retain the knowledge taught to them? The researcher will be analyzing the second question to see if there is a correlation between breaking the English Language Arts block into smaller segments and students paying attention and retaining the knowledge taught to them. Pre- and post-tests will be used to collect and analyze data about correlation between breaking the ELA block into smaller segments and students paying attention and retaining the knowledge they are taught. The researcher will begin research by collecting pre- and post-tests from students in the class. This type of research is considered quantitative. This research will be used over the course of an entire school year. The researcher will begin collecting the data in August and will finish collecting the data and begin analyzing the results at the end of May. The researcher will specifically ask for the pre- and post-tests from the first period and second period students in the class. The first period class is the one taught with no segmentation. The second period is the one taught and is being broken into 3 segments. The researcher will label the first period's pre- and post-test as Sample A. The researcher will label the second period's class as Sample B. The researcher will use charts to analyze the data. The charts will show if there's a correlation between segmented ELA classes and student attention and retention of knowledge. The second type of data that will be used to answer this question is teacher and student surveys. The surveys will be used 3 times throughout the year. The first survey will be given out in August, the second survey will be given out in December, and the third and final survey will be given out in May. The teacher will be given a survey that asks the following questions. Do you think the first or second period class pays more attention to your teaching during ELA block? If you think there is a difference, why do you think so? What are your teaching strategies for your first period class? What are your teaching strategies for your second period class? This survey would be analyzed and used to see if the teacher changed her answers to the questions throughout the year. The students would also receive a survey. The survey would be passed out to all students 3 times a year as well. The survey would be marked Sample A or B depending on the class the students are in. The survey that will be passed out to students will ask the following questions. Number 1, do you like ELA? Number 2, what is your favorite part of ELA? Number 3, if you could change something about your ELA class, what would it be? Number 4, do you have some suggestions for your teacher? These surveys would be analyzed and used to see if there's a correlation between what students think about ELA and how well they pay attention and retain knowledge. Methods for question number 3. The researcher will be using data to determine the following question. Will using several strategies during the English Language Arts block have a positive correlation to student learning? The researcher will be using pre- and post-test and direct observation. The researcher will begin research by collecting pre- and post-test data from the students in a class. This type of research is considered quantitative. This research will be used over the course of an entire school year. The researcher will begin collecting the data in August and will finish collecting the data and begin analyzing the results at the end of May. The researcher will specifically ask for pre- and post-tests from the first period and third period students in her class. The first period class is the one that is taught ELA using only one strategy, and the third period students are the ones that are taught ELA using several teaching strategies. The researcher will label the first period class's pre- and post-test as Sample A, and label the third period's class as Sample B. The researcher will look at the scores from both classes and try to find a correlation between better test scores and using several strategies to teach the students. The researchers will collect this data using bar charts. The bar charts will be labeled Sample A and B. The charts will show the pre- and post-test data from the beginning of the year. The charts will then be used to see if there's a correlation between grades and students who are in the English Language Arts class that is using several different teaching strategies. The second type of data that will be collected from this research is observation notes. The researcher will be sitting in Miss Thompson's class during the first and third period. The researcher will take notes and list all the strategies that Miss Thompson uses in her third period class. The researcher will also take notes on what single strategy she uses in the first period class. The first period class will be labeled Sample A, and the second period will be Sample B. The researcher will be looking for a correlation between student attention, behavior, and achievement by using several teaching strategies in the ELA classroom. The researcher will also take several observation notes about what is happening in the class. The researcher will note any behaviors, good and bad, that occur during either Class A or B. The researcher will label all observation notes, Sample A or Sample B, so that they will be easily accessible and easy to identify between the two different classes. The researcher will be observing the classes from August until May. By using this data, the researcher will be able to form a solid conclusion on how strategies affect students in the ELA classroom. So these methods will be carried out like I just explained. So does anyone have any questions? Okay, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.